Yo everyone, it's Brendan here. Today I'm going to be talking about a universal framework that everyone can use to organize their finances. Have you ever wondered what are the different categories you can allocate your money to? Do you know what the optimal allocation ratio is for your financial situation and stage in life? If you don't know the answer to either of these questions, not to worry because you're not alone and I'm here to help you with that. So if you stick to the end of the video, you'll understand the framework that you can apply so that you have a financial plan for all seasons of life. Before we get into the content, let's start with why. Why is it important to have a financial framework? Let me start off by sharing some fun facts about a fascinating animal I read about recently, and that is the hummingbird. Hummingbirds are not found in Singapore or in Asia. Instead, they are typically found in the Americas. Their name comes from the fact that they create a humming sound when they rotate their wings in a figure of 8 up to 70 times per second. This adds up to more than 4,000 wing beats per minute, which produces the humming sound. They have the highest metabolic rate in the animal kingdom, where their heart rate can reach as high as 1,260 beats per minute, which is breathing 250 times at rest. To put things into perspective, an average human breathes 12 to 20 times a minute, which is a good 10 times slower than this little creature. Now, what does a hummingbird have to do with finances? Because you came to learn more about that and not for Animal Planet. As fascinating as the hummingbird is, the tragic part about this is that hummingbirds are constantly hours away from starving to death due to their high burn rate. Just like them, we are one critical event away from a financial catastrophe. We fail to prepare for emergencies and we burn our paycheck at such a high rate. That's why a financial framework is so important. Instead of having life force our hand, we instead have a solid plan in place so that we're never caught off guard. In order to do that, let me go ahead and introduce the universal framework. To start off, your entire financial life can be split into various categories. Let's call them buckets. There are 4 main buckets which covers different items and serves different purposes. The first bucket is expenses. Things commonly included in this bucket are daily needs such as food and transport. It also includes things like bills, taxes, insurance, debt, and credit cards. The purpose of this bucket is to meet your current personal needs and wants. For expenses, we want to keep it low but also keep it balanced. The general idea is to reduce expenditure as much as possible so that we can reallocate the money to other buckets. For example, cut out excessive online shopping, cancel subscriptions that you don't use, and take more public transport instead of cabs. These will help you to save and invest more. However, I also mentioned keeping it balanced. You shouldn't skimp on these so much to the point that you feel miserable or not have your basic needs met. Finding ways to cut expenditure might seem like a sacrifice to some, but it will be beneficial to you in the long run. One thing that helps is to gamify this bucket and make reducing expenditure fun. For example, I cut my own hair, which reduces my expenditure by about $12 a month, which adds up to $144 a year. I would then use some of this money to reward myself with a nice lavish, let's say $60 dinner buffet, and keep the rest. This makes things fun, but at the same time always keeps me on my toes to constantly ask myself, do I really need or want this? So for expenses, keep it low, but also keep it balanced. The second bucket has to do with savings. This involves things like your bank account or anywhere that you will store cash that is liquid or basically easily accessible. The purpose of this bucket is to store your emergency fund, spare cash, and your fun fund. So first off, emergency fund. Everyone, and I mean everyone, must have an emergency fund. This is typically 3 to 6 months of your expenditure saved up for a rainy day. So if you spend $1,000 a month, your emergency fund will be $3,000 to $6,000. There's really no right or wrong whether you choose 3 or 6 months. Some people go to the extent of even doing 12 months of expenditure saved up. The bottom line is just have an emergency fund. This will help you to tide you through tough periods of economic uncertainty and critical events such as retrenchment. Nobody likes to be in that position, but if you are, at least you're prepared for it and have time to get back on track. The second one is what I call the fun fund. Similar to what I shared earlier, it's basically rewarding yourself for doing a good job with managing your finances well and enjoying life. This could be going for a nice holiday or buying that item that you've been eyeing for a long time. But once again, be balanced about this and don't go overboard. The last one is spare cash, which goes without saying is a catch-all for all other miscellaneous items. So for savings, remember emergency fund, fund, and spare cash. The third bucket is about investments. The usual suspects for this would be stocks, cryptocurrency, property, and CPF. The purpose of this bucket is for the long term so that you can grow your money for use later on in life, such as for retirement. The strategy is to consistently set aside money to invest in the stock market. This allows your money to be put to work so that it grows even while you sleep. Some of you might say,
Brendan, cannot invest lah. I only have extra $100 a month. So small amount, what use?
this is when I whip out one of my investing principles, which is better something than nothing. Did you know that putting your money in something called the S&P 500 is better than hiding your money in the bank? Bank account interest rates are ridiculously low at 0.05%, whereas the S&P 500 gives you an average of 10% every year. This means that money in the bank loses out to inflation, which is 4% annually. You also want the eighth wonder of this world on your side, which is compound interest. Whatever the amount, whether big or small, just invest and invest consistently. Now, there are a few exceptions to this. For example, if you have a huge high interest debt to pay, like from credit cards, get rid of those first before investing. Anything that is above 10%, settle those first. Don't invest any money until you have paid off those debts. I also mentioned that property is part of this bucket. Shouldn't it be under expenses, since I'll definitely need to take a housing loan for it? Yes and no. Loans and debts will be under the expenses bucket, but property can and should be considered as an investment tool. I see young couples making the mistake of taking on a huge housing loan to buy a depreciating house that they declare would be their forever home. What they don't realize is that 10 years down the road, with different lifestyle choices and income, they might change their mind on how they want to live. But unfortunately, they're already stuck with a property that is now worth less than what they paid for. As such, they miss out on the opportunity to accelerate their financial growth. So when it comes to investments, consistently set aside money for the stock market and open yourself up to more options by seeing property as a potential investment. And the last bucket is for giving, which covers any form of donations to non-profits, or it could even be blessing someone with some money. Now, most people would actually put this under expenses, but I'd like to propose that this be a separate and dedicated bucket, since it serves an entirely different purpose, which is to make generosity a lifestyle. It will help in reducing our materialism and greed while helping out our society. And technically speaking, it will also help you financially by actually qualifying you for tax reliefs. Don't give if you are in a dire financial situation. Even if you really love giving, you can't give what you don't have. There's a reason why in airplanes, you're instructed to put on your oxygen mask before assisting others. Also, be balanced, don't give everything away and leave yourself in a financial mess. Otherwise, the strategy would be to set aside money to give consistently. Start small and cultivate the habit. When I was young, I was told that if you can't regularly give $1 out of $10, you won't give 100 out of 1,000. Both are just 10%, but it will be much harder to part with that bigger amount, and I've actually found that to be true. For most of us, we weren't brought up to give regularly, but I like to encourage you to find joy in giving. Start somewhere that you're comfortable with and continue growing from there. Always remember the reasons why you give and don't give out of obligation. So these are the 4 buckets. You might want to swap out some of the items across the buckets, and that is completely up to you. But generally, these are most of the items you're going to have in your financial life. How much should we be allocating for each bucket? Here's what I recommend. Start off by allocating 50% of your income to expenses, 20% to savings, 20% to investments, and 10% to giving. This is a simple yet sustainable way to keep your finances in check. You may find along the way that you change the percentages up a bit due to different seasons of life or certain lifestyle changes. Just make sure that you keep it balanced and don't do anything extreme like spending 100% of your income and saving none. We were created as human beings, so let's live like human beings. not hummingbirds. Be consistent in applying the framework, don't expect overnight success in your finances, but instead enjoy the process and don't give up. And with that, I want to thank you once again for sticking to the end of this video. Do remember to hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm, and also I'll be donating 1 cent for every 2 likes to 1 tree planted to help in our global reforestation efforts. Don't forget to subscribe and switch on the notification bell so that you never miss a video. With that said, thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.